environmental
agree.
noises and the painting like stillness of the outside.
I mean, Andrew Tate's whole thing before becoming the Andrew Tate, sex predator piece of shit that he is he was a fucking kickboxing champion. Multi-time, Dude got kicked in the head for a living and became worldwide famous from getting kicked in the fucking brain. Okay? Now, granted, he kicked other people in the brain, and he kicked them in the brain better than they kicked him in the brain, apparently. But still, dude spent years of his life getting kicked in the fucking brain. So, yeah, I think those two are probably literally fucking brain broken.
World reinforces this feeling even more. Heck, look at the sky. It's beautiful, but it's also dreamlike in a way. Upon entering the mansion for the first time, the dead silence of the area surrounding Blackwood Manor is abolished by the loud ticking of a grandfather clock, which echoes through the empty house. The building is beautifully decorated with era-appropriate furniture and tapestry. It still feels reserved and tasteful, with its mostly small interiors that use space effectively. There are larger rooms, but in most of them I feel like I'm walking through small hallways surrounded by furniture with small nooks and crannies to look at. There's also a noticeable variety in locations, even though the whole story takes place in the house and the property surrounding it. From the basement to the attic, most rooms feel different and colorful. There is a sameness to the attic and kitchen area when it comes to the color palette, but that only makes the locales in the first floor stand out even more. Even the throwaway areas that you enter only once are incredibly detailed, like this bathroom for instance. There is no scene in the game that could be described as ugly, even with the occasional low-res texture. There are lots of small details in the environment that sort of amplify the look. A small bit of light that shines through the downstairs window, for example. Scratches has rooms that just feel incredibly hostile or unnerving to be in. The gallery especially has a haunting quality to it that's juxtaposed by the tribal ambient soundscapes that
a little
fill its
monotone.
halls. The music is both beautiful and haunting at the same time.
Or it has a very
the early pieces
specifically
establish a mysterious,
understated
unknown,
palette.
but beautiful environment for you to explore, and as the story progresses forward, it shows you its teeth quite effectively. The soundtrack reminds me a lot of Penumbra, with its approach to classical instrumentation and ambient music. But I feel like in the case of Scratches, the classical pieces are more dominant and also more terrifying, since they are used cleverly coupled with well-constructed scares or just generally well-done tension building. My favorite track is probably the one that plays in the basement. I'm unsure what instrument this is, but if I'm being honest, it sounds like the ritualistic torture of a violin.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
The first time I came down here to check some fuses, I was so anxious I just wanted to turn the game off. Describing all this probably feels kinda unfocused, but I wanted you to understand the components the team used to make the game's atmosphere, story and horror work. The thing about Scratches is that it goes old school when it comes to horror.
To me is
it's a slow burner, teller and not exactly a shower, at least early on. Because after day one, it starts showing, but I have to say that it's really great at telling too. So good in fact that simply through reading accounts of previous residents made me fear for my well-being in a supposedly empty house. The writing is excellent and the accessibility of the earlier texts have always bugged me, like they were just left there by someone who ran out of his home simply because they were engulfed by a sense of impending doom. Get out of here! Your copyrighted nature scares me. Even its dialogues are well done, though they are not the strongest aspect of the game simply because of how they serve more of a gameplay progression purpose in my opinion. You talk about story beads, but these work as hints as to what you're supposed to research or learn about most of the time.
Its atmosphere
or they just straight up give you something immediately.
Lost in Vivo's atmosphere feels very artificial because it's just different textures on what are ostensibly the same walls and corridors. Over and fucking over and fucking over. You're just going through like a fleshy butthole, and then you're in a prison, and then you're in a fucking sewer, and then you're in a bunch of hallways in a hospital, then you're in a subway, and it's just different skins. It feels like different skins on the same fucking location over and over and over. And I was just getting so it just felt so tedious. Holy, I don't know how it's definitely just a me thing, but when I'm looking at the game and I can feel it, just when it feels like the construction of it is lazy, it starts to become very tedious for me. And that's how it was starting to feel. Like, okay, I'm in another long corridor, I'm gonna turn a blind left, can't look around the corner, can't see what's coming up, you just kind of gotta bolt through everything. And fucking, it felt like there's no strategy. It felt like there's no skill. It's just like you're going to be on this fucking rail and you're going to experience what the fuck we tell you to experience. And it's like, okay, I could just be on a roller coaster, dog. Like, what? Why am I here? I would if there was more to it. If the tight spaces were more interesting, if there were like secret passageways you could find, if there were more puzzles involved, if there was more thinking or skill or strategy utilized in those tight spaces, like being able to peer around corners or being able to duck and hide in those tight spaces, using shadows, maybe if there were ladders up that you could like pull yourself up and something pass under you, or if there were grates on the floor that you could do that with. Like, if there was strategy at all and not just continuously walking through the same tight spaces over and over and over. You know what I mean? Thief? Yeah, I should try Thief. I completely agree. God, dude, I've never felt, well, I don't know if that's true, but not that I can think of in recent memory have I felt a game just wear on me, like, and make it, every moment of it just feel tedious. At first, the first time that I played it, it was like this anxious thing where it was like, oh fuck, what's gonna jump out? What's gonna jump out? But then I stopped caring. By the second time we were playing, I just stopped caring. I was like, okay, ooh, a thing jumped out at me, fuck. You know what I mean? The only jump scare that really got me was the dog this time. And that was because they took control of the camera and moved you real quickly around a corner and then the dog's in your face, you know what I mean? So, like, again, that was a manufactured thing. And it's just like, ugh. I don't know, man. Well, I mean, I do know, and I just explained it, but it's just quite frustrating.
Useful. Not much is known about the characters. Michael is too damn eager to stay in a house that's clearly dangerous. Though that's something I thought of as a means to push the player in a way. Like in horror films where the protagonist enters a place that the same person would avoid for good.
To my knowledge, right now, Signalis is my favorite fucking horror game of the past, like, 10 years. I love that fucking game, and I'm so glad I played it. I'm so glad I got through it. It's so fucking good. I had a blast almost the entire time. I love that game. You know, I had 2 or 3 complaints, obviously, but I complain about fucking anything. That having been said, yeah, that game's fucking sick. Did we crash? I don't know. But anyway, Signalis is fucking amazing. Lost in Vivo, that ain't it for me. You know what I mean? It is not it for me at all. It's fine on your end, okay. And I don't know why Stream Elements decided it was gonna fucking have a little hissy fit. But alright, let's continue this. This looks pretty fun too. This looks at least like I would be thinking and not just that's gonna kind of be the refrain for Lost in Vivo for me, is keep going forward, keep going forward. Because that whenever I would ask you, like, oh, what should I do here or whatever, you were like, just keep going forward. And I think that's exactly indicative of what I didn't like about it, is it's like, yeah, there's not much more thought to it. Keep going forward. Don't think, move forward. Don't think, why are you thinking? You know? Be a wheelbarrow that's going downhill. Just move. Have no thought. That's how it felt. And yeah. Anyways, sorry, I'm done bitching.
Not much is known about Jerry, other than the fact that he knows Michael well enough. He's someone who urges Michael throughout the story to just fucking dip, dude. He has his own reasons to tell you to do so as well. He's voiced by Jonathan Boakes of Darkling Room and, by the looks of it, Street Sects fame. I picked up on his voice quite fast and I like his delivery a lot since he's convincing in this one. Doing a great job. Also, I love how sarcastic these British folks are.
It's me.
The Ghost Hunter. Any contact with the other world yet?
Actually, I'm not sure.
The story the building has for you is probably the strongest part of the game. Scratches pulls off the uncovering a long-forgotten mystery trope incredibly well with clever pacing, patience, and a story that keeps you in the dark intentionally for a long while. As I said in the beginning, Michael is there looking for inspiration to finish his second book. But after setting your typewriter up, you won't be doing too much writing, because the history of the Blackwood family is just more intriguing, I guess. Michael procrastinated a lot more than I did while making this video, and that is an achievement of shit. I never expected to be outdone in such a way. Wow. There is a clear ascension when it comes to tension and atmosphere. The first day brings many problems for Michael.
Isn't this
As
just
I mentioned,
Misery the game
electric-
though? Like kind of, like that's the premise of Misery is that there's a writer in Maine because of course he's in Maine. He gets into a car wreck and is then nursed back to health by Kathy Bates, who decides that his ankles need a good breaking. And she's like, write this fucking book the way I tell you to. But it's very similar. It's kind of like, or The Shining. The Shining's an even better example. A writer goes on holiday fucking to write. He has like severe writer's block, and oops, the house is haunted, oopsie doopsie, and we made a fucky wucky, and now there's ghosty woasties, and there's a doggy woggy giving heady way. Sorry, but yeah, that was weird. Was that a dog or a bear? I don't remember. But anyways, yeah, this feels just like Stephen King, The Game.
the and water shortage. Adding salt to the injury, scratching sounds can be heard at the night through the walls of the house. Aside from these rather uncomfortable problems, the lingering sense of dread becomes stronger and stronger as you learn a lot more about James Blackwood, the owner of the manor, an engineer, and collector of African artifacts. His hobby, however, received a substantial amount of importance when he discovered a tribe called the Dalmar, whose mischiefs he tells about in his journal in quite a gruesome manner.
Yeah, even more than Silent Hill 1, because Stephen King very much loves to, like, self-insert as the main character, or at least a part of himself. So many of his main characters are writers. It's kind of weird. And a lot of them also deal with, like, this kind of uneasy, haunted house, kind of empty countryside location type thing, You mean Harry? As a protagonist, he has some definite, like, Stephen King-isms to him, like the fact that he's not particularly interesting outside the situation that he's in. But Harry is less like a Stephen King protagonist in that he has, like, a clear goal, I guess. You know what I mean? Oh, was Harry a writer? Harry's a writer? I thought Harry was... I don't know what the fuck I thought Harry was. I thought he worked in sanitation. I have no idea. But yeah, there's... I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, Harry comes off, like, immediately having, like, a goal, right? Get Silent Hill Dar's missing fine daughter. Whereas a Stephen King character is more like, oh, I'm on vacation or whatever, and then the world around them kind of changes their perspective of things, right? So they go, the fucking writer on vacation goes to a haunted building. Oh shit, ghosts, and a bunch of other fucked shit, and he goes crazy. Or guy living normal life with his kids goes to the store. Oh shit, the mist happens. Like, that seems to be the MO of Stephen King, is like normal people doing a bunch of kids fucking living in a small town or whatever, going to the sewers. Oh shit, it's an it. Fucking what else? I'm trying to think of other Stephen King things. Fucking guy goes to a fucking rest stop in the middle of Texas or some shit. Oh crap, the fucking semi-truck is possessed. Or oh crap, the car is possessed. He'd use that narrative twice. Fucking kid buries pet. Oh shit, pet cemetery. Like, it's all like fucking normal person goes to place ends up fucked up. Normal person has to try to survive at best. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Whereas Harry, like, already had backstory as to why he, like, he had backstory that gets explained throughout the game that shows why he's in the situation that he's in. Even though, like, it's not his fault, the kid, brought him there or whatever. And as soon as he gets there, like, his kid's missing and he has to go find her and stuff like that. Like, I feel like yeah, Silent Hill protagonists are more proactive than Stephen King protagonists, generally speaking. Yeah, most Stephen King protagonists, outside of maybe It, don't really, like, they mostly try to survive, more so than they are trying to actively do something about the situation. The only times I can think of where that isn't the case are It and maybe The Mist. But everything else, it's just kind of like, oh fuck, let's run from the possessed car, let's run from the possessed semi, let's run from the possessed animals, like let's fucking run from the possessed Jack Nicholson. Like it's all, yeah, Stephen King definitely has a theme, but yeah, let's run from Kathy Bates and her hammer of woe. So yeah, it's all mostly just like, oh shit, let's try to survive and leave this fucking place. Whereas in Silent Hill, they have more clear objectives, and they're usually trying to achieve those objectives. Let's run from Jack Nicholson in general. Agreed. 100% agreed.
You see, these guys are not your unloos or whatever. They are unhinged cannibalistic maniacs who like to destroy
Shelley
things.
Duvall like shit.
Blackwood's obsession with the tribe results in a chain of events that lead to the murder of a family member and other questionable acts. Whoa, you thought you can just sneak in there, didn't you? Nah, that ain't gonna work at all. This is spoiler territory, and I'm going to tell you about Blackwood's filth and what really is the secret of the house. Skip to this bit if you would like to miss out on them spoils.
But yeah.
I know that I haven't said that much, but the less you know about the story, the better, if you haven't experienced it just yet. Also, I'm going to talk about the last visit episode in this section as well, which has been added via the director's cut edition. Coolio? We're inside.
Yeah, this to me
Also, I know that some of you guys have been meaning
feels
to
like
ask
a
me
Stephen
something.
King novel, but in adventure game form.
This is Timmy Tinsel here. I wanted to let you know that I fucking despise your guts because you fucking lied to me, you piece of shit. I told you I wanted a space game for your next review. Where's the Star Wars hentai dating simulator review, you fuck? I hate you, dude.
Hi, I was under the impression that we were going to be getting a space game.
I don't want the sandwiches. No.
Clearly that was too
Get out of the
difficult.
basement right now. I'm trying to
Silly
call
fucking
someone.
fruit.
What's up, Melon? Can't help but noticing we're not in space. You said
The red M&M?
I'm just a little fucking upset that
Oh, the red M&M from the commercials. I was like, what the fuck do you mean? I thought you meant like, Slim Shady. Yeah, I thought you meant, it sounds like the red Marshall Mathers. I'm like, the fuck, is he the Hulk now? This motherfucker's got a red version? Is there a gray version that's smart? Like, what's happening? I didn't know that fucking Slim Shady out here fucking having slim shades.
we're not in space, but I love you, buddy, and I hope
Sorry,
your
but
video's
what the fuck is
great.
this? I thought we were getting space stuff. This isn't space.
But yeah, I
This
hear
is
that
something
too.
Very different.
Hey, Domino's, yeah, can I get a 4 cheese pizza and 2 cans of Coke, please?
I tried, okay? I couldn't
Yeah,
record footage
exactly.
for some reason, but like in the middle of this one, I actually figured out what the problem was, so it's coming. We're going to space in the next one. For real this time. I didn't want to cause trust issues, but I understand that I have responsibilities as a nobody on the internet now, and I will make up for it, I swear. So, it turns out that James Blackwood's interest in the Dalmar might have been deep enough for him to steal an artifact, a ritualistic piece. A mask to be precise, the importance of which lays in its role in the Dalmar's history, who, according to their legends, imprisoned a harmful spirit, basically a god in it, through a ritual that has to be reinforced and performed over and over again. Since it was chilling behind a barred up door in the gallery, you can probably see what kind of problems this can cause. The mask's corruption seemed to be the cause of everything terrible happening around the manor. From the simple things like the death of all the plants in the Blackwood greenhouse, to the terrible occurrences like the death of Blackwood's son Robin. The genius of Scratch's story is in fact that the game deceives you purposefully throughout its entirety. Your efforts are focused on the mask, but occasionally you are able to glance at the relationship between James Blackwood and his friend Christopher Milton, who supports him in his crazy endeavors, and also Milton and Mrs. Blackwood's. Oh. These people are having an affair while the man is having an existential nightmare going down. I can still hear some of you asking, what does this have to do with the mask plot? Quite a lot, you beautiful little soul wrapped up in a human skin tortilla. You see, that's the big suggestive plot of the story.
Call me that.
You focus on the paranormal aspects throughout all this. There is a notion that the decrepit old Mr. Blackwood is inside the house with you, further reinforced by the fact that one of the bodies is missing from the family mausoleum. Of course you check, you sick human burrito. However, this theory
Please,
goes down
sir.
the drain when you
Stop
find
referring to
evidence
me
of
as a human
Blackwood
burrito.
burying his wife on the property
I can't
after
trust
her
you
neck
when you
was
say
given a
that.
kiss by something sharp. So we have both the bodies now. We also find documents about the ritual that's required to evict the mean-spirited spirit man from the mask, requiring something from a predator and its prey to be mixed with a specific plant and to be applied on the branch of a specific tree. You get all of this without a hitch, don't you worry about that. You put together your amulet or charm or whatever to wave over that wood-ass, loud-mouthed, stupid thing to finally shut it up for good. You can actually hear its influence, almost like it's mocking you. But when you eventually perform the ritual, the silence that comes afterwards is just deafening. It's an incredibly well done moment where you actually succeed at your goal, and as you would take a moment to chill and go downstairs to the hall, something happens. The scratching still persists. Considering that it's in the title of the game, it should be the focal point, right? You only hear it 3 times in the entire game though. But the build up to these sequences is
I kinda
incredible.
like that.
With the first night serving up the realization that there is something in the basement. Yes, that music is there for a reason. On the second night,
No
followed
shit.
by the first of 3 scares in the game, 2 happen right after each other. After climbing into the furnace to follow the sound, you basically find a human shape run past the crack on the wall that you've been creeping through. Something human is clearly down there, and at first it seems to be connected to the mask, intentionally through dream sequences that focus on the damn thing. Also,
man
this
is
whole
crawling
setup,
through the
I
furnace
love
on
how
purpose.
well it works. It does so because it lulls you into believing that the story is actually going to be a paranormal one. It's not, and that's the big galaxy brain moment in Scratches. When I say galaxy brain, I actually mean it. But in reality, Mrs. Blackwood wasn't the only one who died in the manor. The Blackwoods had a young child who passed away extremely early, as you can find out from one of the newspapers in the attic. This young child doesn't play a pivotal role throughout the narrative, but sort of lingers on in the background as you learn more about him. Up until the
Okay.
final few moments of the story, I haven't thought much of him. Then it all clicked. As you venture down to a sealed section of the basement through a hidden tunnel, you come across a room with a sad-looking teddy bear, the head of which was torn open. The realization hit me as I gazed at the remnants of a life broken
left
and
you there?
destined to go unfulfilled. I glanced at the crack in the wall that I shouldn't have disregarded before. The scratching sounds came from Robin, the Blackwood's son, wandering about in his makeshift prison cell. Finding him is the ultimate twist in a story about the paranormal that was more real than we thought so.
Right.
It all made sense. Mrs. Blackwood's romance with Christopher Milton and the way they talk to each other about bearing the burden of something they are both responsible for. I was pretty sure that the malformed look of their son is not to be blamed on the mask, and I was right. How can I know for sure? Let's take a look at Last Visit for a second.
A bottle of thalidomide. I remember reading
There we go.
something about that drug.
Thalidomide. The controversy surrounding it in the 50s and the 60s due
Okay.
to how its consumption caused irregularities
So they
and
kept the
deformities
kid
in
down there
fetuses
because
if a
he was
pregnant mother took the medication.
disformed. He
It
was
could even
disformed?
result in the death of the baby. In the Last Visit, you actually find a bottle in one of Catherine Blackwood's drawers, which Michael didn't really care for in the original game, but it's the same thing. I don't think I have to tell you where all of this is going, right? Mrs. Blackwood gets pregnant thanks to Milton, and the medication she's taking ends up deforming his unborn son. The baby survives, however, and lives in a way that's really hard to call a normal life. Blackwood chalks it up to the curse of the Dalmar mask and goes insane while Milton is trying to cover up
Oh.
all the evidence, including the murder of Mrs. Blackwood, whose neck has been torn apart the same way as the teddy bear in the hidden basement, possibly when she just wanted to see her malformed son. Her body was buried in the yard of the property and is
kid killed
required
her?
to break the mask's curse. But what happened to Michael?
Yeah,
He finished
really.
his book after leaving and became a prolific writer.
Jesus.
Considering that he
Well, I
didn't do
guess
jack
Jay's
shit
got a
and basically
fucking theme.
procrastinated throughout the whole job, that's a great outcome. The Last Visit further continues the story years later. You take control of a reporter who tries to investigate what happened at the Blackwood Manor. It is incredibly short, and as I said before, it sort of reintroduces the original ending while kind of pointing you towards the more realistic aspects of the story. It ends with Robin jumping you and Milton as he attempts to see him once again, ending in his demise. After which the Blackwood Manor gets demolished and your reporter character ends up piecing together parts of the story, getting a semi-complete picture. But you, as the player who saw
feel like
both
I've
accounts, will have
heard
the full
this
rundown
exact
of
story
events.
somewhere.
Milton, who was the last person in the house after the death of
Milton's
Mr. and Mrs.
Miltons.
Blackwood, passed away by the hands of the horrifying beast his son became. I have to say that the janky-looking animations that brought Robin to life didn't take away from my investment at all. There is an uncanny valley to the way he moves and behaves, which makes me more than uncomfortable.
Sloth love
Though
chunk.
I feel like the ending of Last Visit looks a lot weaker in comparison, probably due to how the scene is more complex. I just wanted to add this here so I won't spoil anything for the others. The sense of discovery in this one is incredible, and I feel like a historian who is rummaging through the remnants of someone's legacy and life, which was left to rot somewhere in secret, away from everyone. I cling a lot to stories like that because I just love unsolved mysteries. If I could inject those into my bloodstream, I would probably become high on life for once. My only complaint is that I didn't get to know too much about how Michael ended up finishing that darn book. I'm pretty sure he was rather shaken by the whole "I'm gonna chew on your pretty little neck, buddy" bit, but that's literally the only thing I'm not happy with in terms of the story. Like, I didn't get answers. Oh, and maybe the
Why is he
fact that
chewing
how
on
was
people's
Blackwood
necks?
able to steal the mask from the Dalmar who basically murder entire villages with their bare hands. That I would
Ooh,
be
yeah.
interested in. Oh, before I forget, there's a
Okay,
secret
I wasn't
ending,
gonna bring
buckaroos.
that up
There is
because I
one.
forgot
Hell
to.
yeah, there is
but
one.
yeah,
If you
that's.
keep on pestering Michael about writing whenever you can, I did it
Didn't you
whenever
take
I
like
made
a workshop
progress.
with her
And
recently?
also choose the second dialogue choice when talking to the ex-chief of police on the phone. You'll end up finding a note in your notebook about how Michael is not him anymore and he lost his ability to write. At the end,
Yeah.
it isn't going to be a room full of scares and sadness. It's gonna be just sadness. It's gonna be
That's,
the corpse of James Blackwood, who became insane and murdered both
Yeah,
his
she
wife
went-
and friend, and possibly his son as well in the process. What this ending suggests is that nothing could have made those sounds in the basement, meaning that
Jesus,
Michael
man.
became just as
That's
insane as
wild.
Blackwood did. I don't like how the animation shows the crack
Yeah,
of the
she
wall you
was-
enter, but when you're inside, nothing is there. It's just nitpicking, small budget, I understand.
was like
I get that. I consider this
fucking-
ending to
I
be
don't know,
quite
man.
clever since how even Bailey,
I
the
don't understand
policeman,
where it
hints at
came
the
from.
possibility
Sorry,
of Michael
can we
slipping
pause
as a
this?
means of
Yeah.
foreshadowing.
I don't understand where it came from either, because it's like she didn't get the role. Someone else was cast, right? Then she did get the role, and people were like, "Hey, we feel bad for the person who got recast, right? So we're going to like send sympathy towards her and be like, hey, you know, sucks that you got recast, blah blah blah." And then Wendy just like lost her shit. She was, yeah, she didn't pop off when she was recast, right? She only popped off when people were showing sympathy for the other voice actress, who clearly doesn't have as prolific of a career and is, you know, more or less just starting out comparatively. And like, I don't get it. I don't understand why she was like so fucking mad. And it's like at mutuals too, at people who like, I guess are supposed to be her friends in the industry. It's weird, dude. I don't know what the fuck. She's in the show. Wendy's in the show 2 other times. So that's not the only character that she would have voiced in Bleach. Yeah, I don't know much about Bleach at all, but yeah, Bleach was never my jam. That's wild, dude. I don't know what the fuck. And then she's like, "You fucking people just want the legacy cast back," and it's like, okay. And she said several different things. One is like, oh, it's a scheduling conflict, you know, and then another one she said is that people just want the legacy cast back. And then another thing that she said is like, oh, you guys weren't sending me sympathy when I was recast. And it's like, you're sure just throwing a lot of shit at the wall. I mean, what actually happened here? Was there a scheduling conflict, or like, I don't know, did you make a call? Like, what the fuck happened? You know what I mean? Because it just seems like she is giving conflicting reports. Like, did people want the legacy cast back, or was there a scheduling conflict, or what? Like, what is going on here, and why are you so fucking mad? I don't know. That just, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I think the best thing she could have done there is maybe shut the fuck up. Yeah, I agree, and like, I just don't. I don't see why she couldn't have just let. Like, okay, that's definitely the wrong way to put it. I don't understand why she couldn't have just chilled on the whole situation, like, you know, regardless of whether she got cast or not. This, you know, new actress got replaced, and people were giving her sympathy because at first a lot of people were super happy that she got the role for her. You know, they were happy for her, like, oh, black actress is gonna play this black character. You know, congratulations, that's awesome, blah blah blah. And then she got recast for whatever reason, and people were sympathizing with that. And that's what sets you off? That just seems so weird. It seems so weird and so petty. And yeah, I don't know. I don't want to like go full conspiracy theorist and shit, but it's like, it feels so weird that she's so petty about it. And it feels like there's like maybe other stuff going on. I don't know. She got the role back on those quiet when recast. Yeah, that's so fucking weird too. Exactly. Like, why would, like, if you're gonna be mad about it, about being recast, like, okay, when Future Realm was coming back, they weren't gonna go with John DiMaggio again as Bender, because I guess he cost too much or whatever, right? And then people were pissed about that, and so they, you know, it started trending on Twitter, and all of like his cast members were behind him and stuff. You know, I think Katie Seagal and Billy West were with him, and you know, he was rightfully upset about that because that's like his iconic role or whatever, and it's a very major character. It's like obviously one of the three main characters essentially of Futurama. So that was, you know, a big thing was made about that, and then eventually he was cast due to, you know, fan backlash and stuff. And that seems to be the way that it would normally go. You wouldn't be mad about it after the fact when you get the role back, you know what I mean? It's just, it's so fucking weird. It was, I don't know. It's such a weird thing. And I just, yeah, I lost a lot of respect when that happened. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I just, it didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. I feel really bad for the actors who got recast. I would have felt pretty bad for Wendy Lee too. Well, not really, actually. She's prolific and has like 100,000 fucking roles, and like you said, she's in Bleach 2 other times. So I probably wouldn't have felt bad actually for Wendy Lee. I feel bad for this new actress who doesn't have as big of a shot in the industry and stuff like that. Like that's who I feel bad for, is the person who needed it more, and who maybe probably could have played the character, you know, more accurately, theoretically. Plus nobody would have even noticed her. Yeah, exactly. Is that like her biggest character in Bleach, or what? Like how often is that character in Bleach? You know what I mean? Is she like a main character? Like, describe to me in Dragon Ball terms. You know what I mean? Is she like a Vegeta, or is she like lesser and more like a Tien, or is she like a fucking Launch? You know what I mean? It's her biggest character. Okay. So that would have been her biggest character in Bleach. Okay. I see. Well, whatever. Yeah, that's unfortunate or whatever. You lose your biggest role. Okay, yeah, I would feel a little bad. She's like Android 18 or Bulma. Wow, Bulma's in like most of Dragon Ball though. Bulma's a pretty big deal. Android 18 is less of a big deal, but still pretty substantial. Chi-Chi, not Bulma. Okay, I see. Okay, that's probably okay. So, you know, sort of a like secondary, tertiary character. That's fine. Yeah, all right, whatever. I mean, Wendy Lee has way bigger roles than that. I don't know, man. If it were me, I don't know that I would be that upset about losing a role like that personally. But then again, I'm not in her position or whatever. Maybe it's a financial thing. You know, maybe she needs the money, but I have to assume she gets like some residuals from all of her roles, and then she also does the voice acting classes that you yourself are taking part in. So I feel like she's, and she does cons, I'm sure. So it's like, I kind of feel like it's not about money. So I don't know. I shouldn't speculate on people who I don't know. You know, that's not right, not smart, not good. It's just, I'm just trying to like find a reason for it, you know what I mean? I almost want to find an excuse to make it so that she's not just like being mean for no reason. Yeah, but maybe she is.
If you choose the right
I have no idea.
options, I can totally
It
see
certainly
someone
comes off
stumbling
as her
on this
being
by
quite
accident
petty.
simply out of desperation to get Michael
That is
to
on
finally
its
write
face
something.
very much
but
how
it's
it looks.
disconnected from the last visit, which clearly shows what is canon and what is not. It's basically a reward and a little tease if you went through the effort of actively trying to help Michael in his original quest on becoming a well-known writer. In this case, he tried so hard and got so far, buddy. You're
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah, she
for that
reacted
honesty.
with
As a means
a lot
to
of grace
conclude
and
the
a lot of
story
poise,
segment, I feel
and
like
you know, was
Scratch's story is a well
very,
written and well paced one with a lot of care and effort put into its structure. Complemented by great presentation, Scratch's
she's
in
very
my opinion,
professional
is a
about the
beautiful
entire
and interesting
situation,
horror
whereas
game.
Wendy
But the
Lee was
story is
very
just
not
a portion
professional
of
and
what is
was
to come.
in
How
people's
is the
mentions who
gameplay?
weren't
Well,
even
it's in the
fucking
name of the
adding her, and
genre,
it
you
was so
dummy, you'll
weird.
be clicking a lot. You look and
I don't
move
know,
around
dude.
with your mouse.
I just
The basic
don't get
control
it.
scheme seems
Like,
odd
girl,
at
you got
first
your way,
because
you
your
got your
cursor is
fucking
centered
rollback
and
or
moves with
whatever.
a sort of momentum, meaning
Why
that
are you
it
so
doesn't
salty
stop
that
when
people
you
are
do,
just trying
sometimes
to
even
like
requiring
sympathize
you to
with this girl?
compensate for said momentum
Chill.
and pull back. Lower the
Jesus Christ.
sensitivity and it's gonna be great. Personally, I like this way of movement more because it feels like actual looking around, having 360 degrees of freedom. The other one has a cursor that you can move freely on the screen and you are required to pan in order to look around. I don't know why, but this felt a lot more limiting, probably because I felt like I'm having a harder time navigating my surroundings. It's just not as intuitive as the previous one. There's also slideshow mode. You can move between screens by clicking in specified locations with the left mouse button. The right mouse button brings up your inventory where you have your trusty notebook and magnifying glass. The first one is there to help you keep organized and to provide you with help, but I never really needed it. I basically forgot all about it while playing. The ladder, on the other hand, is for examining the items in your inventory. I rarely use this one as well. The inventory itself, however, plays a pivotal role in puzzle solving, with the possibility to combine items and use them on specific objects.
I like that a
Scratches
lot.
is one of
I've
those
always
games
liked
where you
that.
won't have to do any pixel hunting. That is somewhat of a staple in early adventure games, which basically means that it
Sure the
won't
hell is.
require you
Click
to scour
everywhere.
through every screen for something unnoticeable. Scratches is extremely straightforward about item placement. Some environments tend to be extremely dark, and finding items in a dimly lit garage on the bottom of a toolbox can be difficult. So my advice is to turn up the brightness just a bit, okay? The game's puzzles are straightforward and mostly easy to figure out. There are some tricky ones, like figuring out the safe combination based on some play blocks, which you get no hints for. That was actually one of the most difficult puzzles in the game for me, aside from the mausoleum one. Most of them, however, are telegraphed well and are intuitive. There is even a hint system that provides help when you're stuck and actually pointed out some mistakes I made. If you haven't played any adventure games before, I recommend turning this on. It's not as intrusive, but doesn't leave you in the dark either. I talk out of experience because this was Baby's first adventure game. As I said previously, the phone in the hall plays a pivotal role in the story. Talking to others on the phone sort of functions as a trigger. You can only call someone once you accomplish most of your possible goals, and the calls usually provide more direction, while also adding small bits to the story. Sometimes,
Okay.
however, you can end up doing a lot more progress than the game anticipated, so you will be able to call Jerry again straight after you put the phone down. Sometimes the game tells you about this, sometimes
I was
it
like,
doesn't.
why is it
It's
sitting like that?
important
What
to
is
make
this, like
sure
a
because
note
calling
type
is usually
situation
what
with the
makes time
ship?
go fly by. The game is divided up to 3 days, and as you're making progress, time flies by. If you accomplished everything that day, Michael can go to sleep. Next day comes, rinse and repeat. The gameplay loop itself is captivating enough thanks to the pacing of the story. You're always getting something interesting to kickstart your day, let it be a safe combination or a date, whatever. You're sort of dependent on Jerry at first because he has a wealth of information. This makes the phone calls work, and also the fact that you are dependent on these people because they basically help you. One of them even translates a letter for you. I would give Barbara a raise, Michael. I hope you will. Scratches is a beautiful, well-written and rough gem that is an extremely good entry point if you would like to start out on point and clicks. It is clearly a labor of love that came out long after the glory days of adventure games, bringing a dish back from your childhood that you haven't had since. Since the indie boom, the resurgence of many abandoned genres is coming to fruition, and seeing beautiful and well-written point and clicks again is always a heartwarming and comforting feeling. Even though I didn't have a chance to experience them in their glory days, Scratches made it possible for me to dip into the genre. It was great to look back at the game that made me fall in love with the adventure game genre and experiencing it as it was meant to be. A gem that harbors the better qualities of point and clicks, a genre basically left for dead by big corporations telling you that they are
Yeah.
not going to sell.
Very true.
I would like to thank you for watching. It means a lot that already so many of you, almost 100 of you, have tagged along with me.
Oh,
I never
wow.
expected that to happen and I'm thankful.
Ah,
I don't
deserves
like to
more
be the guy
subs.
who asks for you to slap that like button and hammer that subscribe button and bell into submission, bucko. And also comment, but shit like that helps.
I'm gonna sub to him. I couldn't just now because I had to find a workaround for the fucking ad bullshit. But all right. I think he is definitely deserving of the sub. Just in case.
There's no movie that looks quite like Wong Kar-wai's 1995 film, Fallen Angels. While the movie is well known for its intimate, kinetic visual style, the most unique aspect of the movie's cinematography is one that's often overlooked, and that's its lens choice, an element which, it turns out, is surrounded by so much mystery that I think I might be the first person to ever actually get to the bottom of it. When it comes to lenses, the focal lengths a cinematographer chooses have a huge impact on the final film, both visually and in what those visuals convey to the audience. Expressed in millimeters, focal length is the way in which lenses are categorized along a sliding scale of perspectives, determining basically how a lens sees things. To give you a little bit of context, on 35mm cameras, lenses in the 35 to 50mm range are right in the center of that spectrum. These are what we call normal lenses, and perceive space and distance roughly similar to that of the human eye, and as a result, feel fairly neutral to us. Going up in focal length, past 60mm, we start to get into telephoto lenses, which make things appear closer than they are in compressed space, often used for isolating subjects and showing detail. On the lower end, below 28mm, are wide lenses. The wider your wides get, the wider the cone of vision or field of view the lens has, and the further away things feel from the camera, making them great for things like landscapes and playing with perspective. For Fallen Angels, cinematographer Christopher Doyle chose to shoot the vast majority of shots on an ultra-wide-angle lens. Ultra-wides take in nearly everything, making environments feel huge, exaggerating distance, and up close, making portraits feel warped and intensely personal, having to be mere inches away from the subject to actually film the frame.
Like skateboarding videos.
The first day of shootings, we work in a very small tea house. The only way we can do is to shoot with a wide-angle lens.
Audio, video, camera stuff. I have a lot of different lenses.
Something more interesting. So I asked Chris, do we have an extremely wide angle lens? He said, yes.
It's about space. We use a wide angle because these people are so close together but so distant, and the camera should be close to them, therefore you feel very close to them, but you know that they're really separated by a great distance of, incomprehensibility. They can't talk to each other. That's after the fact. I mean, the real fact is, it was a small space and we had to get close, right? And
that's
then,
exactly
then
why
you start
I use
going
a
that
24
direction and you
millimeter.
say, hey, it's working, this is interesting. And then you try and put on another lens and you say, shit, I mean, anything else doesn't work.
These effects are a critical part to the film's unique, exaggerated style, and even now, the specific ultra-wide they used stands out from others like it. Aside from its massive field of view, the lens was soft and dreamy and distortion-free, and sensitive enough to shoot at night with little additional lighting on the streets of Hong Kong. The uniqueness of the lens has made it something I've been curious to learn more about for a long time, but there was just one problem. Nobody seems to know what it was. No matter where I looked, I couldn't find a single example of someone definitively identifying which lens Doyle had used to shoot the film, even all these years later. So, I decided to find out for myself. I started the only place that I could think to start, digging through forum posts and random film blogs that happened to mention the lens usage in the film, looking for any sort of reported make or focal length that I could go off of. What I found was a lot of rumor and conjecture, but some consistencies did start to emerge. The posts I found all seemed to cite an unnamed 6.5mm ultra-wide lens. Even now, that's an outrageously wide lens.
Yeah, that's huge.
With even the most advanced and expensive modern ultra-wide cinema lenses topping out at around 8mm. That may not sound like a lot, but as focal lengths get smaller, the greater the difference between them becomes. So at this level, even that measly 1.5mm could make a huge difference in what the lens sees.
True.
The source of that 6.5mm figure seemed to come from a quote given at some point by Christopher Doyle, but not a single one of the posts listed exactly where it had come from or substantiated it in any way. For all I knew, it might not have even been a real quote. But it was a lead, so I resolved to figure out exactly where the quote had come from, in hopes that in some way it would lead me to what I was looking for.
I'm pretty sure that's like ultra-wide fish-eyed, like, skateboarding.
One of the first places I was able to find Doyle's quote in the original context was a mostly ignored Reddit post on the R Cinematography board, also trying to identify the lens. The quote is cited as from an interview with Chris Doyle and reads, "When we did Fallen Angels, I started with a 9.8mm lens. I thought that was rather distorted, but Wong Kar-wai said, let's go further. So we went to a 6.5mm. Michelle Reese turned her head and her nose became like Pinocchio, just extended through the whole frame. I said, "What are we gonna do?" And Wong Kar-wai said, "We don't show her the rushes, do we?" However, the quote seems to have been first posted on and subsequently quoted from the cinematography.com forums all the way back in 2004.
Damn.
Though it also matched the number of the focal length I'd seen most referenced, it was the only other discussion thread online I could find citing the quote in its entirety,
I do like how it looks.
but still with no more sourcing than simply from an interview with Chris Doyle. Even if the quote had some truth to it, there was no way I could be sure until I could confirm against the primary source that it had been accurately transcribed or even existed at all. Putting the full quote into Google frustratingly turned up nothing but the 2 forum posts I had already found, but cutting it down to its less cited back half, one more result slipped in: a scanned archive of a 1996 issue of Australian film magazine Cinema Papers, featuring an interview with Christopher Doyle and the original quote in its full context. Unfortunately, the quote in context was still frustratingly lacking in further information. Aside from that one-off line, the lens is never mentioned again.
Wow.
No models are listed, no distinctive characteristics, nothing that I could even start with for IDing the lens. I went back again trying to find any other primary sources online mentioning the 6.5mm lens for any sort of clarification, with no luck. Aside from the post citing back to it, this interview seemed to be the one and only source of that number, and the further I dug, the less certain I became that this lens was even the one that I was looking for.
Aren't particularly common to get that wide of a shot. That's a really uncommon lens, so just look for a lens with a good f-stop for low light and you probably will have a very short list, especially if you can figure out what camera he used. If you figure out what camera he used, then you know what compatible lenses there are. So you get the compatible lens list, you find 6.5mm, and you find one that's good in low light. It's not that, I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult, right? Finding out what camera was used should be the easier part.
I'd already tried and failed to dig up 6.5mm cinema lenses on my own, but in a few of the forum posts mentioning the interview, I'd remembered seeing a few people confidently suggesting that rather than one of the more popular Cinelens makes, it was in fact referring to a quote Cine Nikkor 6.5mm f1.8. That made sense on its face.
Because it's low.
The focal lengths matched, and the very fast f-stop or light sensitivity would have allowed them that level of low light shooting featured in the film.
I told you.
But it seems as though I'm the only one who has ever even thought to look deeper into this, because on any investigation...
I know what the fuck I'm talking about. The only thing is, though, I thought f-stop 4.2 was better. But 4.2 is a higher f-stop, which means that it's better in, well, it's not really better in high light, but it's bad in low light. Lower f-stop, better in low light. However, with how good this is, I would have thought it was like a 1.2, but if it's 1.8, I mean, it's 1.8. Yeah, so that is how f-stops work.
The whole suggestion seemed to fall apart.
It's how much light is being let in.
For starters, the Cine Nikkor 6.5mm isn't even a single lens. It was first introduced as an 8mm camera lens back in the 50s, where, on the smaller film format, it would have looked closer to a mid-wide than the touted mega-ultra-wide of Fallen Angels.
Yeah.
A later version was developed for the popular Ari mount that looked much closer to what I was looking for, serving as an ultra-wide option for film and television cameras, with one problem. It was a lens made for 16mm size film, a whole half size smaller than Fallen Angel's 35mm film stock. Even if Doyle had found one of these lenses and jury-rigged it to his 35mm camera, it would have created a huge black vignette around the entire image, making it completely unusable and obviously not what we see in the film's final photography. I had to face the facts. There was no way this was the lens. With no remaining alternatives, all I was left with was 2 equally defeating possibilities. Either Doyle had misspoke in the interview, or the focal length had simply been a misprint. Regardless, it was a dead end. However, reviewing the previous posts I'd originally gone off of, I found a surprising lead in a stray comment by another working cinematographer mentioning a second possibility, the Keen Optic 9.8mm lens.
That makes a lot more sense, because 6.5 would be wildly fucking
The Keen Optic
wide.
9.8mm ultra-wide lens is a classic in the industry, famously used by Stanley Kubrick in A Clockwork Orange and in The Shining, where it featured in the film's finale maze sequence. Over the years, a number of other films have made use of the lens's extreme angle and wide f1.8
THX,
aperture for
sorry.
shooting in small, challenging environments where additional light was scarce. Originally released as a stills photo lens with no manual focus ability, many were eventually rehoused by the company Century Optics for cinema use, transferring the inside of the lens into new, more ergonomic bodies and adding a focus ring, which made the lens more usable and more desirable for filmmaking. The lens's distinct organic rendering and its regular availability would have made it an obvious choice for Doyle when looking for an ultra-wide to fit their vision for the look of Fallen Angels. Looking back at the interview quote from Doyle, he also referred to a 9.8mm lens.
True.
And from there, narrowing the search from a seemingly non-existent 6.5mm lens to the much more plausible 9.8 finally gave me the breakthrough that I needed.
Okay.
With these new search terms, my first hit was a college thesis on Wong Kar-wai, with only a single mention of focal length in a section discussing Fallen Angels, specifically claiming that a 9.8mm lens was used, citing a 2005 book by Stephen Teo. While I was unable to easily track down that book, another book by the same author about Hong Kong filmmakers fortunately featured the same information. In Teo's 2007 book, Johnny To and the Hong Kong Action Film, he says, Wong shot the whole of Fallen Angels with a 9.8mm wide-angle lens.
Okay.
The book, like the thesis, only mentions focal length numerically once, again in regards to Fallen Angels, claiming, somewhat confusingly, that Doyle and Wong shot the entire film with a 9.8mm lens, something, as far as I could tell, is absolutely not correct. While much of Fallen Angels is shot on an ultra-wide-angle lens, the film features a number of shots, like these, clearly made with longer lenses. Even though the claim the book was making was absurd, at least this time it was sourced.
So, let me
Following the
explain
bibliography
some things, I guess.
final.
Hold on. Okay. That, first off, I don't think is a 9.5mm lens. I think that's probably closer to like 24.
I think, as far as I could tell, is absolutely not correct.
I'll show you what.
While much of Fallen Angels is shot on an ultra-wide-angle lens, the film features a number of shots like.
Okay, the wider a lens is, the more things are going to be in focus. Okay, so look at my lens right now. My lens on me. Okay, you see how the back is pretty much not in focus. There's a little bit of blur, but that background's pretty far behind me. It's probably about 10 feet behind me, right? And this is a 24mm lens. So if the background is that clear, being about 10 feet behind me, right? Look at how blurry it is going back. How blurry the background is for her in the top right, okay? That kind of effect, the blurriness of your background and the foreground being in very sharp contrast in focus, that's called bokeh. Okay, the blurrier your background is, it's called bokeh. In order to achieve that kind of bokeh, you want a closer lens. So like a 50mm is the most well known to achieve that exact framing. I know this because first lens I ever bought for myself was a 50mm, and I bought it because I thought that looked so cool. And I was going to use it with this camera for this setup to make the background blurry and to make me hyper sharp. However, it would have also been twice as close, so I would have looked huge, which is why I went down to a 24mm. So this, I believe, is probably a 50mm lens. Top right is probably a 50mm lens. It could potentially be a little under that, maybe a 40, 45, but on average, it's probably a 50mm lens. Because again, there's a sharp, distinct difference between the background and the foreground. Whereas the smaller lens, like a 6.5mm or 9.8mm, you're going to have a lot more in focus. And as we continue here,
is clearly made with the longer lenses. Even though the claim.
Look at how much of that is in focus. You can see all the way to the back benches. You can see the windows. You can kind of see outside of the windows back there. This almost entire frame is in focus, and even this I don't think is a 9.8mm. I think this is probably closer to a 24. Yeah, well, like I said, I used to be heavy into audio video. So I just learned all this shit because, you know, I was doing the anime reviews and stuff, and I had like huge plans for big skits and like an overarching narrative and stuff, and yeah, I was gonna go into it real heavy, but then I stopped doing it.
The book was making was absurd. At least this time it was sourced. Following the bibliography led me, finally, to my second actual primary source, a book of interviews with Wong Kar-wai. However, in the interview in question, originally published in the Hong Kong film magazine City Entertainment, far from claiming that the entire film had been...
Okay, again, everything's in focus. Okay, there's blur around the lights, but that's because it's a low light situation, right? So that's going to happen. The lens, even at a really good f-stop of like 1.8, is going to be sucking in as much light as it can, and that's going to lead to the blurring effects, right? But everything is in as much focus. The foreground is in as much focus basically as the background. There is very minor difference, and that is due to the incredible wide angle and the relatively good f-stop. I would argue really good f-stop.
Shot on a 9.8mm lens. Wong comments instead that they had used the focal length as their standard lens during filming for its extreme distancing effect, saying that it made, quote, the distance between characters look far, but in fact, the characters are very close. Once again, I got to the bottom of that claim, but it didn't really answer my question. I already knew that a Keen Optic 9.8 was on set from the earlier interview with Christopher Doyle, and it's definitely possible it was used for at least some of the wide shots.
They use, just to point out, they use it for skateboarding and stuff because it makes like the rail, if somebody's grinding down a rail and you take a shot at the bottom of that rail with the wide angle lens, it makes the rail look super long, right? Or if they're on a half pipe, it makes the half pipe look super big and like they're getting a ton more air than they actually are. So yeah, they use it for like skateboarding magazines and for skateboarding videos, things like CKY and shit like that.
At the film, but I still couldn't answer definitively whether that was as wide as they went or if that standard was just where they started. And on top of that, something about the conclusion just didn't feel right. The 9.8mm is a very wide lens, but comparing some of the shots from Fallen Angels to others in films using that lens, the perspective in Fallen Angels still seemed somehow more extreme to me. And on top of that, I still couldn't shake the mentions of other lenses in that original interview.
I agree. This is almost like silly-ass 90s commercial when, like, the teacher or whatever gets up in the child's face and it's, like, super stretchy wide. Like, this does feel lower than 9.8. I don't think it's... I personally don't think it's 6.5. I think we're probably talking about an 8mm, but it does seem wider than The Shining and whatnot. See, those shots also give you inspiration. Yeah, these are great shots, for sure.
I tried going back and searching writings about the film for other vintage ultra-wides, like the 8, 8.5, 9.5, and 10mm lenses made by Panavision and Lomo, as well as pouring back through old search results looking for something I might have missed, with no luck on either front.
I don't think
it was
those
one
are
thing to
2.8
hunt down
f-stops.
focal lengths I'd actually seen
Because
referenced
I have a
before.
2.8 f-stop, and I don't think it's that good in low light. As good as whatever they're shooting with.
Now I was completely in the dark. So I did what any good sleuth would do at this point, and I took a wild swing for the fence. My thought was, if the 6.8mm lens cited in the Christopher Doyle
6.5.
interview could have been a mistake either by him or the publisher, could some of these sources talking about a 9.8mm lens be mixing things up in the same way, especially since Doyle had been so certain that they'd gone down further than that? So I split the difference, and I did a blind, exhausted search for what seemed like the only possibility left. A 6.8mm lens.
Well, I knew that 6.5 was too low. There's a 6.8mm.
Immediately, I turned up a series of completely new hits. On the front page was...
I've never heard of a standalone 6.8mm, but I know that there are things that have focal zoom that could probably hit 6.8. I need to watch this movie. Yeah, I mean, it looks great. I love the shots. I love the lighting. I love everything about it
I
so
found
far.
another thesis and a film review, both referring to a previously unheard of 6.8mm lens used in shooting the film, and both citing in their bibliographies a book by film critic Peter Brunette. To my luck, this book was not only easy to find, but doubly confirmed the number for me. Its first mention quotes an interview with a French magazine, Positif, saying,
I can totally
the film
see that.
was shot almost entirely with an extreme wide-angle lens mounted on a handheld camera. Christopher Doyle has explained that prior to Fallen Angels, the widest angle lens that was considered usable was 18mm, whereas here he had used an incredibly wide 6.8mm lens. Quote, with a 6.8, I can see my assistant standing next to me. It's so wide. The characters have to be very close because as soon as they get a little further away, they seem too far away. To my disappointment, this is one source I was not able to chase down and double check myself, as Positif does not archive their old editions online. But for me, it's a slightly easier grant, considering the second source of the 6.8 number comes from an interview with Wong Kar-wai by Brunette himself. He says, as we went to that noodle shop, it is so small, the only way you can shoot in it is with a wide-angle lens. But I felt that a wide-angle lens was quite ordinary, so I asked my cameraman, do we have an extra wide angle? Yes, he said, we have a 6.8, but that will make your actress look terrible. I said, let's try it. And with that quote, I'd completely exhausted not just my sources, but what I believe to be just about every reasonably available primary source on the matter. So, it was finally time to put together all the confusing threads to see if there was enough to figure out once and for all what lens helped give Fallen Angels its unique and affecting look. So, after all this, what information did I have?
Oh, I was gonna say.
Christopher Doyle and Wong Kar-wai.
I'm like that symbol that they showed just now isn't deductions and conclusions. I think that's Yon or Gon, right? That's either 4 or 5. Yon or Go, sorry. Yeah. So, but then I realized this is section 4 or 5, and that's okay. Now I get it.
I agree that a 9.8mm lens, one which seems to have been, by appearance and availability, to have been the popular Kinoptic 9.8mm, was used during filming. In interviews, both insist that they stepped down from a wide lens, the 9.8mm, to something much wider in the 6mm range. Despite the oft-repeated quote from Doyle, there's no way it could be the 6.5mm lens. There is no evidence of such a cine lens that I can find, and the closest, the theorized Cine Nikkor 6.5mm, is at best a 16mm film lens, which would not have been used on a 35mm production like Fallen Angels. And the only other specific focal length I can find cited is 6.8mm, but that doesn't appear in any lists of vintage lenses either. So the question is, how do we get from that Kinoptic 9.8mm to a 6.8mm lens that doesn't seem to exist? The answer finally came to me in a link that I nearly glanced over at first, a PDF form from 2014 listing the lenses available to rent from a large German rental house.
Okay.
Right there.
Where is it?
Century Tegea. That is the name of the Kinoptic 9.8mm lenses rehoused for cinema use.
Okay.
And right below it, a wide-angle attachment, bringing the 9.8mm lens down to exactly 6.8mm.
Wait, what's after?
Exactly what I was looking for.
So it's 2.3 stop. So it's even. So
wide-angle
it's even
adapters are nothing new, but were more commonly seen back in the day for extending the range of fixed-lens camcorders.
Well, I knew it wasn't 2.8
but professional
stop.
versions are still around and have been for a long time. A quick search revealed an old info sheet confirming it. This whole time, I'd been searching for an extra wide lens that matched the Kinoptic 9.8, when in reality,
so
it
they
was
went
the Kinoptic all along.
Aperture is how much light is being let in, or like the iris of the lens, how wide open it is, right? So if you go full aperture, it's called going wide open, allowing the most light possible, right? The more light that you allow, the more blown out the image is going to look in a high light situation. In a low light situation, it'll look something like this, right? It'll draw in light from wherever it can. So it seems like most of the time they just went with the natural lighting of the room with like 1 or 2 spotlights that kind of are giving a hot spot to that corner and giving a hot spot to that pillar over there. Excuse me. And then they just went full aperture, wide open. Wonder if I sub to this guy. You should.
Through a wide-angle attachment. Such a simple answer that it managed to stay right
totally
under
tracks.
our noses.
I never even thought about
these
that.
years.
And the funny thing is, I have a wide-angle attachment.
Though, like
That's
most
so funny to
films,
me.
Fallen Angels was shot using a variety of lenses.
Of
The
course.
film's famous ultra-wide shots were done using a Century Kinoptic 9.8mm T2.3 lens, and, at least in part, taken further using a 0.7x wide-angle adapter, effectively converting it down to a 6.8mm lens. And with all that out of the way, there's just one obvious question
Yeah, I
remaining.
agree.
Is this really what made Fallen Angels Fallen Angels? Let me be clear really quick. One of the things that makes me most uncomfortable with filmmaking communities is the strange gear fetishism they have. As if shooting with the right lenses or the right film stock or whatever will automatically make up for anything your movie might be lacking. And if there's one thing I want to avoid with this video, it's leaving people with the impression that it was this one lens that made Fallen Angels what it is. From the editing to the music to its neon-soaked alleys and incisive portraits of loneliness in the big city, everything is working together to make the movie as special as it is. But that lens choice is an example of some of the little things that really fascinate me when it comes to movies and how they're made.
At least if they have
I
any
love those
gaming in
highly
them,
specific little details you might not think of. The tiny accidents and circumstances of fate that end up capturing my imagination and having a way stronger impact than you might otherwise think. That simple choice to go with a slightly wider angle with an add-on adapter makes it that much more personal and visceral and unique, and does a lot to give the movie such a strong sense of momentum and space. It just wouldn't have the same personality and wouldn't be the same movie any other way.
I kind of want to do a racing video like that, or a racing movie where the races are shot like that. I always thought that would be really cool. All right, we're gonna call it here. Quick little 3-hour stream. I just still feel like absolute shit. I'm gonna try to fucking rest. Pardon me. I'm gonna try to rest as best as I can. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll kick into Spider-Man, unless I like can change my feelings on Lost in Vivo. But yeah, I'll do my best. Thank you for hanging out, brother. I will catch you tomorrow. Like I said, this VOD will go up to Arrogant Dubs Gaming, and you can save it from there. And I'll catch you tomorrow, sir. You have a good day. I hope work goes better for you, and happy belated birthday.